All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Huber, Anna Kasparian, back in the studio. Together for the first time in 7 months. Kind of together, she's over there. And your screen, she's over there. Anyways, so excited to be back in the studio. And boy, do we have a wonderful special guest for you guys to mark the occasion. So tonight we got a triple header. Joe Biden later tonight is on CNN. Donald Trump is on NBC. Bernie Sanders on TYT. So Senator Bernie Sanders, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Great to be with you, and it's wonderful to see you and Anna together.
Thank you,
Congratulations.
It's good to see all of us back together again. So Senator Sanders, let me get started because obviously we've got weighty issues here less than 3 weeks before the election and with coronavirus raging. So in fact, the most pressing issue is the bill that is now being considered, the stimulus bill. Some disagreements obviously in Washington about not only what should be in the bill, but Nancy Pelosi's stance to negotiate for a better deal and not yet sign the deal that some folks in Washington are pushing. What's your take on that? Do you think she should hold the line and have you advised from the Senate side on what you think is the right way to go?
Well, Cenk, as you know, Nancy and Schumer have already made major concessions. They have gotten virtually nothing from the Republicans. At a time when millions of people have lost their jobs, people are worried about being evicted, people are having trouble feeding their kids. We need to make sure that every unemployed worker continues to receive that $600 check as a supplement to his or her unemployment. People need that $1,200 check per month. People need health care. We need to adequately fund cities and states who are in the process of laying off hundreds of thousands of workers. So the devil is in the details, but we need a very robust package to protect working people today who are really struggling.
So Senator Sanders, you're absolutely right about the devil being in the details. So given what you just stated, Trump is not there yet. McConnell's not anywhere near there yet in terms of the numbers that you just gave. So does that mean that you think Pelosi should hold the line, even if it means going past the election to try to get a better deal?
Well, Chuck, one of the problems that Pelosi has is you're dealing with an erratic and irrational president who says something different every single day. He wanted to go small, he wanted to go big, he wanted to go not at all. But here is a point that is not discussed very much. The Republican caucus has approximately 20 members in the Senate who really don't want to do anything. So McConnell's problem is that if he went big, which he, I think, is not inclined to do, it would become a Democratic bill because almost half of his caucus really wanted to do nothing. But the bottom line is we have got to be as strong as we can in standing up for working families who are probably today, the working class in America, probably in worse shape than any time since the Great Depression. And in the midst of all of that, obviously, in the next 3 weeks, we have to do everything that we can to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And then after Biden is elected, we have to regroup and continue our fight for a progressive agenda that works for working families.
Senator Sanders, one more thing about the bill for me. Do you know why McConnell has a position that he has? I understand Pelosi holding out because the Democrats have a tremendous amount of leverage at this point, and they could really demand what they want in the bill. Donald Trump has a tremendous incentive to pass the bill right before the election, but the Republican senators are in a world of trouble, according to the polling. So why in the world isn't McConnell agreeing to stimulus?
Because he would look like a fool if 20 of his own members voted against them. And then it becomes a Democratic bill. That's the simple truth. He has a number of right-wing folks who believe they have already done too much for the working families of this country. They're busy thinking about how they can give more tax breaks to the rich, how they can end the Affordable Care Act, throw 20 million people off of health care, how they can ignore climate change, how they can refuse to raise the minimum wage. They are not thinking about how they can help working families.
Senator Sanders, I have one question on Trump's version of the stimulus plan. And one thing that has been frustrating as someone in the media was, just trying to get some straight answers on what the spending is actually going towards. I mean, the media keeps talking about, well, Pelosi wants 2.2 trillion and Trump is offering 1.8 trillion, close enough. But there is concern that Trump could use that appropriated money, let's say in a, incredible situation where McConnell actually does successfully pass Trump's version. There's some concern that that money could be used as Trump's personal slush fund. Do you have any details on that?
Well, Anna, I think your point is well taken. People say 2.2, 1.8, what's the difference? The difference is, in fact, in the details. And I think one of the things that Trump wants, and I have zero doubt would use, is a slush fund to suddenly go out to all of the battleground states already using a lot of money in agriculture to be spending money on farmers around the country whose votes he desperately needs. So you're right, as I understand it, although it's always very unclear when you deal with Trump, because I'm not sure that he knows what he is talking about. So it's hard to know what the White House is referring to.
Do you feel that the Democratic Party has done a good job in messaging how Republicans in Congress have basically fought tooth and nail against providing any real economic relief to ordinary Americans?
Probably we could have done a better job. The difficulty that I think any senator or congressperson has right now is every day there's so much that is going on. Whether it is COVID, whether it's some other crazy thing that Trump says, it's hard to get the word out. But I do want, apropos your question, to just make a simple point. And that is 5 months ago, that's a long time. 5 months ago, the House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act. It's over $3 trillion. I have some disagreements with that bill, but there is no question but that it is a very strong piece of legislation. And all that Mitch McConnell would have had to do 5 months ago is say, thank you, Nancy, we're going to discuss it, we're going to debate it here, let's pass something. He chose to do nothing. And I think what is not clear to the American people is that we have in the Senate the most do-nothing Senate in the modern history of this country. They do nothing but pass the nominations for right-wing judges. We do virtually nothing. Nothing on the economy, nothing on COVID, nothing on climate change, nothing on the needs of working families.
So, Senator Sanders, clearly Joe Biden is going in the right direction on some of these issues, especially regarding COVID. He says he's going to put together a pandemic testing board, something that should have been done a long time ago. And he says, I'm kind of in a position that FDR was. That's a direct quote from him. I'm sure that's music to your ears. If you think about it, what in fact FDR did was not ideological, it was completely practical, he said. And he wants to put in a national supply chain commander. So is there anything in his plans that you say that you would encourage him to do more about, or looking at these plans for what he would do as soon as he got in, are you satisfied that that's completely the right direction?
Well, I think I have talked to Joe on a number of occasions, and he refers to FDR, and I think he perceives that he is coming into office in a moment not radically dissimilar to when Roosevelt came into office in 1933. And that is, Roosevelt came in the midst of a terrible depression. Biden will come into office in the midst of a pandemic and the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression, not to mention climate change and systemic racism and all of the other major issues that we are dealing with. But I hope and believe that whether it's COVID or those other issues, that Biden understands that the American people now desperately need a government which works for them and not just the people on top. Because the crises that we face are so profound, so profound. We've got to raise that minimum wage to a living wage. We need equal pay for equal work. We need to create millions of good paying jobs by rebuilding our infrastructure and combating climate change and putting people to work, retrofitting homes and moving to wind and to solar and transportation, agriculture, et cetera, et cetera. So the task in front of Biden, should he win the presidency, is enormous. I believe that he does understand that in this moment, there's an unprecedented moment in American history. He's going to have to be bold.
You know, Senator Sanders, to your point, when you look at the personal finances of Americans who had to rely on the more robust version of unemployment insurance, it's kind of incredible that so many Americans were able to save for the first time in decades. So I think that you make a really great point there. One other thing I wanted to ask related to the election and the possibility of Biden becoming president. You know, understandably, people are concerned that Trump would not engage in a peaceful transition of power should he lose the general election. What do you believe Democrats should do if he refuses a peaceful transition of power?
Well, I gave a speech on that about a month ago, and we are working on this very, very hard. And, you know, we are sitting here in the year 2020 talking about something that nobody has ever had to talk about in American history. What we're talking about is a president of the United States who, when asked if he will leave office peaceably if he loses, he doesn't say yes. He doesn't say yes. So what we have got to do is prepare for all contingencies. And I just want to make a few points on that issue, if I can, Anna.
Sure.
And that is, I want everybody to understand that when Trump talks about the only way that I can lose this election is if it's rigged, he is absolutely lying, because even the strongest Republican experts, the people who know the most about this, people like Benjamin Ginsburg, a longtime Republican lawyer who works on this issue, has acknowledged quite correctly that there is virtually no voter fraud in the United States of America. So when you hear Trump talking about massive voter fraud, he is lying. Second of all, sadly, in a number of states, what Republicans have done is made it very difficult for the vote to be counted on election night. Pennsylvania is maybe the major example. The truth is, what a number of studies have told us is Democrats are much more likely to vote by mail-in ballots than will Republicans, who are more likely to walk in and vote on election day. So what does that mean? It means that if you are in Pennsylvania and you're sitting on a pile of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of envelopes of mail-in ballots that have not yet been opened, and most of those may be Democratic ballots, you know what? On election night at 9 o'clock in the evening, it may well be that Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania, but that may not be the case the next day. So what we believe and will fight for, every vote must be counted. Every vote must be counted. And we are going to work as hard as we can to make sure that happens. We are talking to governors all over this country to prevent voter intimidation. You know, there have been some stories about people coming out with AR-15s, semi-automatic rifles, trying to intimidate people going in to vote. Governors cannot allow that to happen. Voter intimidation is a crime. We cannot allow that to happen. So there's a lot that has to be done.
So, Senator Sanders, the right wing uses hyperbole all the time. So, Donald Trump says that Joe Biden is a socialist, and he even called Kamala Harris a communist. It's preposterous, but on the other hand, Donald Trump has in fact 5 different times not answered whether he would do a peaceful transfer of power. He today called Gretchen Whitmer, who the militia threatened to kidnap and murder, the governor of Michigan. He called her a dictator, which is not a subtle code word for a tyrant, and that is a dog whistle to the militia. Hey, she's still a problem. He's an incredibly dangerous person who has called for violence from his supporters on a number of occasions. And we're worried might not believe in democracy and might try to hold on to power even if he loses. So is it fair to call him a fascist and to ask other Republicans, including Republicans? I mean, we had Dianne Feinstein hugging Lindsey Graham today. I'd want to do the opposite and ask Lindsey Graham, you're running against Jamie Harrison, a Democrat that's a perfectly normal, rational human being. But do you believe in the fascist inclinations of Donald Trump? Is that a fair question?
I'm not going to throw out labels. We got 2.5 weeks to go in an election. Clearly, this is an authoritarian type person who does not believe in the rule of law. I mean, now we take it for granted that you had a president of the United States a week ago who held a political rally in the White House. You know what? That's against the law. This is a guy who does not believe in the separation of powers, does not believe in the Constitution, lies every single day. And what I have said over and over again, I don't care what your political views are out there. You're a conservative, you're a moderate, you're progressive, that's great. But you got to get rid of this guy as president of the United States because he is undermining American democracy and is insulting the men and women over the years who have put their lives on the line to defend our Constitution and our democracy. That's what we have to focus on in the next 2.5 weeks, defeating Donald Trump.
So, Senator Sanders, that's clearly the goal here now, and you've helped in every way you can to try to make sure that Trump is defeated and Biden is elected in this context. And Biden does sit on a gigantic lead at this point, if we're being honest about the polling. So if Biden does win, he's going to push for a public option. Obviously, you're in favor of Medicare for all. Where does that leave you? Do you support him in pushing forward the public option? Is there a progressive pushback and fight for Medicare for all in a Biden administration?
Well, I will tell you where it leaves me. Everything being equal, if the Democrats gain control over the Senate, and I want to remind all of the viewers, of course, the presidential election is enormously important. Do not forget about the Senate. Democrats stand a reasonable chance of gaining control of the Senate. If they do, Cenk, I will be the chairman of the subcommittee on health. And let me tell my good friends in the healthcare industry and the pharmaceutical industry that if I get that position, and I believe I will, your world is going to change. So of course, we're going to continue the push for Medicare for all. Now, the bill that I presented was a 4-year transition. I didn't go to Medicare for all in one day because I don't think you can do that. In the first year, Biden, Biden now wants to see the eligibility age for Medicare go from 65 down to 60. There hasn't been enough discussion on that. That's important. The first year of my bill, 4-year transition, has it go down to 55. So in the first year, what I would like to see is us lower that age to 55 and cover all of the kids in America on year 1. That is something I certainly will be pushing on. I will also be pushing to make absolutely clear that we end the outrageous collusion and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry and that the people of our country do not pay higher prices for prescription drugs than the people of any other country on earth. Also on that committee, which I will be number 2, the Health Education Labor Committee, Pension Committee, we will pass a $15 an hour minimum wage. And what I'm working on, Cenk and Anna, right now is what I call a 100-day proposal. I want Democrats to come out of that gate very, very rapidly. It is not business as usual. We don't have 6 months to study an issue. We know what we have to do for the American people in education, in climate change, in the economy, in healthcare. Let's do it. Let us try to restore the confidence of the American people in the political process. Let them know that there are some of us who are fighting for the working class of this country, and we are going to deliver.
That was music to my ears. Thank you for that answer, Senator Sanders. Final question for you related to Joe Biden. There is a little bit of a divide among progressive voters as to whether they begin pressuring Joe Biden to move further to the left now or if they should wait until the election happens and he gets elected. Already there are some articles being written about potential cabinet picks, including for his Treasury Secretary. The name Lael Bernard came up, and she's actually a governor with the Federal Reserve. And her history isn't so great for progressives who are concerned about the fossil fuel companies. She was very much in favor of the Federal Reserve buying the corporate debt of these fossil fuel companies, including companies involved in the Keystone XL pipeline. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on that because already, I mean, you see names like that and you start to get a little worked up and you want to start applying pressure. Do you believe that's the right way to go, or would you argue that progressives should hold their fire until after he gets elected?
This is what I think. I think we have got to do everything. You know, you have all of 2.5 weeks. That's not a long time. Let us do everything that we can to make sure that everybody we know comes out to vote. Cenk, you mentioned that the polls look good. They do. They look good for Hillary Clinton as well. So anyone who thinks that Biden is a shoo-in is dead wrong. This is going to be a tough race, and we got to do everything we can in the next 2.5 weeks to win it. Day after Biden wins, let us rally the American people, working class people, people of color, young people, all people who believe in justice around a progressive agenda. And remember, you know, Biden campaigns on his proposals, that's fine. But it is the United States Congress that makes the laws of this country. And what we have got to do after the election, is to make sure that we put as much pressure as we can on the elected officials in the House and the Senate to go forward with an agenda that has the guts to stand up to the ruling elite, that deals with income and wealth inequality, and that finally has a government that works for all of us and not just the few. So to answer your question, I would hold my fire for the next 2.5 weeks. And after that, let's rally the American people around the progressive agenda.
Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. Keep up the great work, guys.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, of course. When we come back, we have so many more stories for you guys, including obviously the news of the day, including the story that Anna just mentioned during the interview, where apparently the Trump administration told some of their donors the stock market might not do as well as we're letting on publicly. That was all the way back in February. The corruption in this country is unreal. We'll be right back and tell you all about it.
TYT is powered by our audience. You are the Young Turks. So I wanted to read the names of folks who contributed to TYT.com/go. Whether it's $3, $100, it doesn't matter. We love you guys. Eli B from Maine, Terry A from Iowa, Dave C from Indiana, Jenny E from Australia, Eduardo G from Mexico, Mark G from California, and Cynthia C from Nevada. We all do it together. Look at you. You're from all across the world. You're all participating, and you are the Young Turks. TYT.com/go.
PragerU is a right-wing media outlet that gets $20 to $25 million a year from billionaire backers. TYT doesn't have billionaires cutting us checks, but the good news is that we don't need them. Okay. Bring it down. TYT can beat the right-wing media and their billionaire funders with contributions of just $200,000 a month from TYT fans donating to TYT.com/go. And we're already halfway to our goal. Look, whether you give $3 or $3,000, your contribution helps us press on. And it might sound like it's a lot of money, but remember, it's only 10% of what they get from billionaires in these giant checks. And with 10% of their money, we're mauling them. And we can continue to get that progressive message out to everybody. And since we're only accountable to you, our fans, and not to corporate backers, we can cover topics like Medicare for All, Green New Deal, and definitely getting money out of politics.
When somebody's the president of the United States, the authority is total, and that's the way it's got to be.
2020 is everything. Everything will be decided in 2020, and then we'll either have pessimism a long time, or we'll have optimism.
There is some good news when it comes to elections throughout the country, especially for progressives.
He's struggling in polls. He's trailing Joe Biden in many of these battleground states. And he knows that if he makes it difficult for voters to cast their ballots, especially as we're dealing with this pandemic, well, maybe it'll give him an edge over Biden.
We need to get rid of these people who are in office, who enable these systems that continue to oppress us. Start using your votes and your dollars for the people who want to preserve your community and your humanity.
Defiance is what you need in order to fight for what you know is right. The fight never ends.
Progressive candidates come on this show, we help them, and they've at least got a fighter's chance.
Expand the squad.
Here we go, Squad 2.0. Corey Bush, Jamal Bowman.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
This time, it's real. If he wins another term, God knows what he'll do to our government, our democracy, and our way of life.
We need solidarity, and it begins with you.
Who's gonna fix it? Who's gonna fix it? Goddamn right. I'm back to gaslighting. Did you and I talk about gaslighting on Old School?
Probably.
That boss gaslit all his female employees. People who manipulate others like that make you feel like you're the weirdo. Why won't you punch yourself in the face? What is wrong with you? And you're like, oh my God, I feel so bad. Why didn't I just punch myself in the face and poke my eye out? I'm 47 and I just figured it out like earlier this year.
You figured out somebody was doing it to you, or that you were
That it
doing
was that it would have been happening my whole life and I didn't realize it.
Right.
It is wrong to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country.
Look, I tell you guys, most important thing is voting in primaries. Primaries.
I hope every American will vote for the candidate and party of his choice, but vote.
We cannot continue to complain about corruption and complain about what's happening in this country and continue to vote for it.
Let's get it right this time. It could be a moment of redemption for what happened in 2016. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. As I always tell you guys, we do this show together with all of you. TYT.com/go is our effort to raise money through tough times this year to get us to sustainability and to be able to get out the strong progressive message so we can do the kind of programming that you see. I want to say a little bit more about that in a second, but let's look at the thermometer real quick. Every month this year, we're trying to reach 200,000, and right now we're at 46,724 halfway through the month, so we are significantly behind. But every dollar counts, and you guys are amazing for helping in the ways that you could. And obviously, you guys are going through tough times as well. So let me read some comments, and then I want to come back to that in a second, based on what one of you said. First of all, Charlie Kasparian, Home Alone in skinny jeans, said, "Yes, Bernie." That's from the member section. Lady in Redlands, California writes in, "Today I got interviewed for mail-in ballot voting as I was dropping off my ballot. Hey guys, look for the damage report t-shirt front and center, Diane M. Clark." That's awesome. More Dragon Squad apparently. All right, shop TYT.com. Those shirts are selling like hotcakes, and apparently you're gonna see it on TV soon. Mondo Libre says, how nice to see Senator back on TYT. I really needed this, thank you. We appreciate it. And on YouTube Super Chat, Trill South Digipimp writes in, excellent interview and question him hard to hold him accountable. TYT staying a member now, fight the power. Appreciate it. Vicious C says, Bernie Sanders legend. You and the upcoming progressive leaders that you've inspired give us hope for the future of our democracy. Thank you. I want to tell you a quick story about that. My son got assigned a homework assignment yesterday. It was to write a report on AOC. Guys, that was just 3 years ago that you made that happen. Isn't that amazing? We told you about a woman that nobody had ever heard of in the country, Alexandria Casa Cortez, and some of you guys donated to her, some of you volunteered for her. We showed you her 34 times before she won, more than the rest of the media combined. And now kids are being assigned homework assignments to write about her. Just 3 years ago, we started on that journey together. So that's why we do stuff like TYT.com/go, because this is the progressive lighthouse, and all of us working together make it happen. Speaking of which, last one is from Twitch. We're on all these different platforms. Hottie Meter just gifted 70 subs. I love the community on Twitch, so keep it going. Thank you guys. All right, Anna's up next.
All right, well, there's a huge controversial story involving the New York Post, so let's discuss it. There's a big debate about what is and is not acceptable censorship on social media giants like Twitter and Facebook. And at the heart of this story is an article that was written by the New York Post. Now, to be clear, the article is sketchy. I certainly agree with that. But I'm gonna preface this story by saying that I don't believe that the social media giants should have censored this story. I think it's actually created a lot more attention toward the story. And it has to do with Joe Biden. So Facebook and Twitter took unusual steps to limit readership of an article by the New York Post about alleged emails from Joe Biden's son. The social media giants took that action before verifying the contents of the article in which President Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and his former top advisor, Stephen Bannon, claimed to have obtained and leaked a trove of private materials from Hunter Biden. The leaked documents suggested at one point he gave a Ukrainian executive the opportunity to meet with former Vice President Joe Biden. The Biden campaign said his schedule indicated no such meeting took place. Now, at the heart of this story is basically the New York Post regurgitating the same narrative that we heard from Donald Trump during the time he was being investigated for impeachment. During that time, he claimed that Joe Biden worked unilaterally to fire a Ukrainian prosecutor who was investigating Burisma, which was a fossil fuel company in Ukraine. Apparently, they were accused of wrongdoing, and Viktor Shokin was the prosecutor who was allegedly doing this investigation. The issue is that story is not true. It's just fundamentally false because the international community wanted Viktor Shokin out. It turned out that he was corrupt and was not doing the proper investigation of Burisma. However, I also want to note that, yeah, it looks pretty bad when you have Hunter Biden serving on the board of Burisma while Joe Biden is the vice president. Now, Cenk, I want to open this up to you, and then I'll give the audience some more details about who Viktor Shokin is and what conservatives have said about him in the media.
Yeah. So guys, there's two completely different things to be concerned about here. One is the substance of the article. Just right before we went on air, two news stories broke. One is on a far-right message board. Apparently the same story was going around a couple of days before the New York Post published it. So somehow these far-right folks on the internet knew about this story before a so-called mainstream media outlet like the New York Post got it. So when you see it on those message boards, that is a huge red flag that it might not be real. Now, the second thing that broke is that they said originally in the New York Post story, and their sources are Giuliani and Steve Bannon. It almost can't get worse in terms of lack of credibility. Rudy Giuliani, I believe, belongs in a literal insane asylum at this point. And so if he said to me, the grass is green and the sky is blue, I'd go double check. So I don't blame the social media networks for wanting to check. I'll get to that in a second. But they said, oh, the laptop was dropped off by someone else, and they just happened to know that it was Hunter Biden's. Now they have officially changed the story, and Giuliani comes out and goes, "Yeah, it was Hunter Biden who dropped it off." Wait a minute. So you were lying in the beginning. So apparently there was good reason to believe that you should urge caution to folks about this story. But at the same time, I understand what Anna's saying, because once you start blocking stories based on, things that are not legitimate. And that's the thing we don't know, right? We gotta be fair, we're gonna cover all angles. Twitter says, hey, look, we have a policy against publishing anything that was hacked. And it's clearly not their computer. And they retrieved pictures and memorandum from the computer that looks like a hack. That's why we paused it. And Facebook says we paused it to verify the facts. If it's just a pause, I think I agree. I think these guys are not credible. I don't care that it's in the New York Post. I have no respect for the New York Post, nor should anyone else. On the other hand, if these guys have me give off the appearance of working for the Democratic Party, that is toxic. And obviously none of us here are fans of the Republican Party, but be careful who you give power to and who they're going to ban and censor next.
I just think that both companies made a mistake, and beyond a mistake, because they have now created a situation in which the Republican Party, and they're professionals at this, can pretend like they're aggrieved, that they're true victims. You have people like Senator Ted Cruz talking about, oh, poor us, we're constantly censored on social media. Of course, there's never any media attention toward all of the anti-fascist accounts that get shut down on Twitter on a regular basis every time they do a sweep of QAnon conspiracy theorists. And it's because, people on the left are not professional victims. Republicans love to play professional victims. But I will say, look, How are we going to allow these corporations essentially to be the arbiters of what is and is not acceptable content on their platforms? These platforms are incredibly powerful. People rely on these platforms, unfortunately, to get their news. And we can't have members of a corporate board or a CEO decide unilaterally what is and is not acceptable on their platform, right? I mean, this is part of the reason why you have Democrats who want to break up these companies or find a solution to this, because again, they are too powerful and people do rely on them for news. At the same time, the fact checking is an interesting approach, but remember, Facebook's independent fact checkers includes people from the Daily Caller. I know that that's not going to make me feel comfortable. So it really is a difficult situation. But I think in this case, they made a giant mistake by preventing this article from being tweeted about or posted on Facebook. I didn't care about the story. I didn't care to read about it until they banned it, and then I read it. And as you read it and you investigate it further, you know it's nonsense. Of course, idiots like Rudy Giuliani can't keep his story straight. And so how about we fight back with facts and evidence rather than try to censor it, which again draws more attention to it.
Yeah, look, I think the main problem here is that Democrats put so much pressure on the social media outlets. And so that's why when a story like this breaks, the perception immediately, and the Republican whining, as Anna's pointing out, the perception then becomes, oh, the social media outlets are banning things based on what the Democratic Party wants. And that's what I'm calling toxic. But the reality is they probably could have handled this better if they were just clearer about it. Jack Dorsey, who started Twitter, said something similar on Twitter, of course, where he said, look, guys, at least we should have put out a better statement explaining why we're doing it. If the first thing I read about it is because Twitter's worried about a hack, I would have thought, well, that makes sense, right? If the first thing I had read about it is Facebook is taking 24 hours to verify the story because of concerns about the sources, that would make sense. By the way, why are people flipping out about this and not just the Republicans? Because New York Post is considered part of the mainstream media. So the rest of the mainstream media goes, hey, we were telling you to ban Trump supporters and progressives later, okay, but we weren't telling you to ban us. So that's why people got touchy about it. And finally, look, to be fair to the social media platforms, it is a super tough balancing act because people are legitimately worried about fake news and it spreads like wildfire on Facebook. That's true, it is, right? And the Russians and all the things that happened in the election. I think the Russians are a really minor part of the story in 2016, but the fake news is a giant part of the story, and that does happen. So people asked them to regulate on that, and there was some logic on that. They did. Now people are concerned they over-regulated a little bit, but they are stuck in the middle. And so there's constantly people yelling at them from all directions saying, regulate, don't regulate, regulate, don't regulate. So if they made an error here in degree, I'm more understanding of that, as long as going forward, when they do something like this, they have a very clear standard and then they apply it evenly, whether it's a mainstream media outlet or not, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, or people challenging both of those parties from the outside.
And final thing, because I promised, I do want to give you the details and the reminder of who Viktor Shokin from Ukraine actually is and how I knew this story was nonsense from the second I started reading the details of it, which is why, again, if Democrats were good at messaging, they would fight back against this ridiculous narrative, especially when you had conservatives at the time that Donald Trump was being investigated for impeachment, speaking out and writing against Viktor Shokin. I'm going to give you a few examples. This is from Tom Rogan, who is not related to Joe Rogan, but does write for Washington Examiner, a conservative outlet. He wrote, Shokin was a true Ukrainian swamp creature, corrupt as all get out. I've never heard that phrase before, but it's fun. If he was right in investigating Hunter Biden, then it was only by accident. While Republicans say that Biden's 2015 to 2016 pressure to fire Shokin was about protecting Hunter, there is no substantial evidence for that accusation. And there is significant evidence for an alternative, excusable explanation. Biden threatened to withhold up to $1 billion in aid from Ukraine unless Shokin was fired because of Shokin's deep corruption. Again, this is a conservative conservative, writing this for a conservative outlet last year as the impeachment investigation was ongoing. Acting to protect his allies' financial interests, Shokin prevented effective investigation of corrupt figures. Street protests against the prosecutor were regular, and in February of 2016, Shokin's direct deputy resigned in protest at the prosecutor's office becoming a hotbed of corruption. Biden was right to push him out. It wouldn't have happened otherwise. Ukrainian corruption is a big problem. And so I mean, the Biden campaign can easily cite all of this evidence, right? And look, I think it's rich for Donald Trump and his campaign to use conservative media like the New York Post to accuse Biden of corruption. And again, I do admit that Hunter Biden working on the board of Burisma was awful and it does not look good and stuff like that shouldn't be happening. However, at the same time, we're talking about a president, Donald Trump, who has literally and transparently fired prosecutors here in the United States, law enforcement officials here in the United States who were investigating him. So he has no leg to stand on. The problem here is that Democrats are too afraid to fight. If they were good at fighting, then they wouldn't need to rely on, any type of censorship in order to prevent these types of stories from coming out.
Yeah, so this is an attempt by the Republicans to do whataboutisms. Oh, Trump might have broken dozens of laws, including ones we just found out about in terms of the taxes and campaign finance violations from back in 2016 in lending his own campaign $30 million, but not from him, but from his partner. I mean, it goes on and on. Dozens of legal violations and law breaking by Donald Trump. They go, squirrel, Hunter Biden, son of Joe Biden, might have done something in a laptop we might or might not have found from him or not. This is not anywhere near equivalent. And I want to give the last word to one of our members because I love doing the show with you guys, and it's a great point. Eclectic Miscellaneous says, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube have so much wrong with them, but they're essential now to make sure that voices like TYT are heard. When corporations are deciding what is or isn't truth, should or shouldn't be published, everyone except corporations and the establishment will lose in the long term. Look, I want you guys to remember that, and that's a great point, because before these platforms were around, all we had was the gatekeepers. So NBC, CBS, Fox News, ABC, you name it. And those gatekeepers never, ever let progressives on. So you got to remember that as well. So I don't want to go back to the bad old days where the elites and the establishment decided who had a voice and who didn't. Now, because of those platforms, you guys get to decide who has a voice and not. That's why I love doing it with the members. If you're on YouTube, you could hit the join button below to become a member. Everyone else, you could go to tyt.com/join. And as you can tell, you make this show happen. All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got so much more news for you guys, including the story we promised you about yet another problem of corruption in the Trump administration, where they told their donors something they never told you. We'll be right back.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you, that say no corporate PAC money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're going to fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free health care for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single-payer health care, debt-free college, and we are going to get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're going to do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Just Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny. Absolutely no.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
Yeah, I was upset with you and I should have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Guys, not a big deal, but you're about to save the planet. So here's how it works. We're planting 10 trees for everyone who signs up at aspiration.com/TYT. Aspiration and TYT are doing this together. Do you have any idea what 10 trees do? Hold on, let me explain. First of all, one tree can provide a day's supply of oxygen for up to 4 people. I plant 10 trees, or you plant 10 trees by going to aspiration.com/TYT. That's 40 people. You're giving oxygen to 40 people. What are you gonna argue with that? You can't argue with that. But if you do, during 1 year, a mature tree will absorb more than 48 pounds of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and release oxygen in exchange. We capture the carbon dioxide, release the oxygen. Aspiration.com/TYT. You save money and you save the planet. What else do you want to do? Come on, aspiration.com/TYT. All right, not only that, you can plant a tree with every purchase once you're in Aspiration and you have an account. There's no way this is going to get better. Oh my God, no deposits used for oil drills or pipelines. Oh my God, up to 10% cash back for socially conscious shopping. Hello. With Aspiration Spend and Save, you get the world's first cashback account that lets you track the impact of your spending, all managed through what an intuitive app. Would a hero sign up for Aspiration through aspiration.com/TYT? I guess.
So this is what democracy looks like.
When I think back to the debates in 2016, this was a very different party that was debating.
First time in my lifetime that I've actually had progressives represent us.
Bernie Sanders has changed the arithmetic.
This whole debate tonight was shaped by progressives.
She came with receipts. That was her strongest moment by far.
This is going to be one of the best primaries we've ever seen.
This is what we've been saying would happen, and now it's playing out on the debate stage.
A real exchange of ideas. It's going to be a doozy.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Actually, let me start with member comments and then I'm gonna work backwards. Pocket in a Pocket writes in, voting and volunteering for AOC is the most important thing I've ever done in my life. Thank you guys for her coverage back then. I'm proud to have her represent me. Well, look, we're super proud of not just AOC, but all the Just Democrats and all the recent wins like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and I'm really hoping Kara Eastman in Nebraska's 2nd district. And guys, when I see you at the rallies there, and then I see you volunteering for Jamal, as that happened recently, and as it happened obviously a couple of years back with AOC, I'm so proud of you guys. And you're literally making change happen. So thank you for doing that. And Meg says, I was all in on the AOC train a few minutes into her first interview with Cenk. That's awesome. So, by the way, when we bring you other candidates, remember that, okay? Because what we're trying to do is effectuate change here. Now, one of the ways that we do that is by staying on air and being sustainable. So, I forgot to tell you guys, I haven't told you in a long time, I know a lot of you know, but if you give $127 at tyt.com/go, you get that awesome We Press On t-shirt with the big TYT mic on it. And at $1,000, you go on the donor wall in my house. We'll move it here eventually to the studio, and you get a hoodie with a Press On t-shirt. But if you want to, at $2,500, this is the thing I haven't told you in forever. You can name stuff in the studio. So folks have started naming things around here all the time. If you want to find out what you can name, you go to tyt.com/presson. And that'll give you a list of things that you could name. Obviously, 2,500 is a huge number, but you guys have been incredibly generous with us, and that's why we keep saying we do the show together. And a shout out to 2 of our sponsors as well, aspiration.com/TYT. Keep your money in a place where it works for you, plus it doesn't work for big oil companies. So it's a win-win in that sense. That's why I tell you that, aspiration.com/TYT. And we love progressive sponsors. So 2 Strong Coffee.com/TYT. If you buy 2 bags or more, proceeds go to Justice Democrats, Rebellion PAC, Wolf PAC, and yes, the Young Turks as well. And it's great, delicious, etc. And then final programming note for you guys is that tonight, after the Biden and Trump town halls, John Iadarola and Adrian Bell are going to
analyze both of those. So make sure you stay on youtube.com/TYT and look out for that live analysis we're gonna give you right afterwards. Okay, there's so many more comments, but we gotta go, guys. We gotta do the news. Thank you for everybody for participating. Anna.
Well, we already know that Donald Trump was intentionally downplaying coronavirus while privately telling journalist Bob Woodward that it was a serious and severe virus that is airborne. Now we've learned through new reporting at the New York Times that on February 24th, members of Trump's economic team were privately addressing the conservative Hoover Institution and warned about the implications of COVID-19 on the US economy. We're talking about the Trump administration essentially warning Wall Street investors about how serious the pandemic could be. So this happened on February 24th. On that same day, Donald Trump tweeted this: "The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. We are in contact with everyone, and all relevant countries. CDC and World Health have been working hard and very smart. Stock market starting to look very good to me." Now the next day, literally the next day, board members, many of them Republican donors, got another taste of government uncertainty from Larry Kudlow, the director of the National Economic Council. Hours after he had boasted on CNBC, meaning publicly, that the virus was contained in the United States and it's pretty close to all airtight, Kudlow asserted that the virus was contained in the US to date, but now we just don't know. So again, on cable television, Kudlow's telling the American people, airtight. You guys have nothing to worry about. Privately, when speaking to investors, he shares uncertainty, worry, and of course, that influences the way these money managers invest in the stock market. I mean, it's incredible that this kind of stuff is happening. We know about it, and this is barely even a big news story today. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, so he was talking to folks from the Hoover Institution. It's a conservative think tank at Stanford. Condoleezza Rice, the head of it. So the establishment Republicans are still, in a lot of ways, backing Trump behind the scenes. And their board is filled with Republican donors. So they go to their donors and they tell them, the stuff we told on air, don't listen to that, okay? Time to panic. And guess what? They did panic, and that caused. And meanwhile, Trump's saying, "I'm not telling the American people because I don't want them to panic." And he's telling his donors, "Go ahead, sell, sell, sell." In fact, let me give you some quotes here. So a hedge fund consultant was at the gathering. He writes a memo afterwards, and he said, "What struck me was the virus as a quote point of concern was brought up quote totally unprovoked." So he writes a memo saying to everybody, hey, they just said on CNBC, nothing to worry about. They kept bringing up to us, you should worry about it. And it wasn't because we asked, it's because they were telling us unprompted. And then there were other folks as well, including, get a load of this, Scott Atlas. Now, Dr. Atlas is the guy who is the biggest kook inside the Trump administration now, and he's the one going for herd immunity. Let's just make sure as many people as possible get coronavirus, and then when enough people die off, we'll be fine. Meanwhile, back then he's a Hoover fellow and a Stanford professor, and he's telling folks. And including one of the guys who wrote the memo, was his source. He was his source that the government foresaw a serious crisis. So back then he's selling donors, serious crisis, make money off it. Because you gotta understand something, it's not just about selling your stocks before they go down. They then make a short bet, and that means you bet against the market so you make money while everybody else loses money. And under normal circumstances, there's nothing wrong with a short bet. But if you got private information from the government because you gave them money, first of all, that's a bribe, okay, that's how that works. And then you make a ton more money by betting against the American people. And
Can I
Yes, go
also
ahead,
share
Anna.
some more details, because it's just absolutely gross how everything went down. So this meeting happens. The Hoover Institution is warned about the uncertainty related to coronavirus. And then following that, a memo was written by a veteran hedge fund manager named William Callanan. And he apparently emailed money manager David Tepper to say that numerous Trump administration officials, Kudlow, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and economists at the Council of Economic Advisors had given the presentation at the White House on February 24th, expressed a greater degree of alarm about the coronavirus than the administration was saying publicly. On February 23rd, by the way, Peter Navarro, one of Trump's economic advisors, also distributed a memorandum predicting that the virus could affect as many as 100 million Americans and kill up to 2 million of them. And that 2 million figure is really fascinating, because 2 million is what is expected if the Trump administration tries to do this so-called herd immunity approach, which is disastrous, because a ton of people who don't need to die would die as a result. But the point here is, you have all of these different players within the Trump administration fully aware of how the potential severity of this pandemic. And while they're telling us, oh, it's totally fine, don't worry, it's just a hoax, behind the scenes, they're taking care of their donors, they're taking care of Wall Street. And the most infuriating thing is exactly what Cenk mentioned right now, that they short the market and they literally make money off of this information.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you one more set of quotes here. It's the first one's from Trump, what Anna told you. He said on February 24th, stock market is starting to look very good to me. Meanwhile, they write the memo after listening to 2 different Trump administration officials. One of the investors that gets the memo, his reaction is, quote, short everything. So while Trump's telling you, oh, keep your money in the markets, don't worry, he's telling his buddies who funded his campaign, hey, make sure you get out there and make a lot of money off of these suckers and losers who I'm telling to keep their money in the markets and not worry about their healthcare and their well-being. And the investors got that message loud and clear when they write short everything, bet for the market to go down. Look, the whole system is sick because we have donors who have this access that you guys never have, and they make tons of money off of it. In fact, they'd be irrational not to bribe politicians, because who wouldn't want a tip like that? They could make millions of dollars off of them. You see the dinner that Trump went to when he was, turns out, positive for COVID, and the one in New Jersey. And some of the folks gave $250,000 to be at that dinner and take a picture with Donald Trump. They probably regretted that later because that means they were closer to him. But you think like $250,000 is an unbelievable amount of money. No, hell no, you could easily make a couple of $1 million off a tip like this. So all it is an investment, and it's an investment in corruption. And this, ironically, from the guy who said that he was gonna drain the swamp. So that's the thing, even if you're a Trump fan who wanted to drain the swamp and believed in what he said, it was always a lie. And this is an excellent example of that. All right, guys, we got only a little bit of time left. When we come back in the postgame, though, for the members, there's a great story of Donald Trump humiliating Bill Barr.
As the White House turns.
And after all of that ass kissing and bootlicking that Barr did, Trump goes after him anyway. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the join button below and you can become a member at $4.99 level. In fact, Ken Tucker, Ella Nelson, and Shells all just upgraded. I love to see your guys' names again when you upgrade. And if you upgrade, you can get all of our videos, including the postgame we're about to do. If you're watching anywhere else, tyt.com/join to become a member and get all the postgames. We have many more stories as well. And we'll be right back with those stories for the members.
You know, it's a very tricky situation.